What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Bo Nickal calls out Khamzat Chimaev. At UFC 290, up-and-coming superstar Bo Nickal made quick work of short-notice opponent Val Woodburn after Tresean Gore was forced out of the fight. Of course, with the win, the Nickal vs. Chimaev storyline advanced yet another chapter, with the former NCAA standout progressing to 5-0 as a professional. Although the fact of the matter remains that Nickal is still relatively inexperienced as a professional mixed martial artist, his grappling experience seems to have translated incredibly well to the octagon, just like Khamzat Chimaev. Fans may remember back at UFC Fight Night Covington vs. Woodley in 2020, Chimaev stepped into the octagon just 10 days after submitting John Phillips in his UFC debut to fight Gerald Meerschaert. Leading up to the fight, there was a tremendous emphasis placed on the fact that 27 of Meerschaert's 35 career wins came by way of submission, and as a result, Chimaev could have a tough time implementing his game plan. However, when the two stepped into the cage, Chimaev knocked him out in 17 seconds flat, much like Nickal did when he TKO'd Val Woodburn in under a minute at UFC 290. With their wrestling skills and the looming threat of a takedown to open up their striking, both men have been able to take the UFC by storm. The way Nickal sees things, in an ideal world, both men will get a few more wins at middleweight before they clash for the UFC title. He spoke during a recent episode of the MMA Hour to discuss the situation.
My goal with Khamzat has always been Allegiant Stadium, sell it out for the belt, and blow the roof off that place when I smash that guy. So, you know, I think it's going to take a little more to build my reputation and get to where I want to be. And, you know, for him to get to where he needs to be in order to make that fight.
With Chimaev rumored to be facing Jared Cannonier at UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi, only time will tell whether or not these two standouts will get a chance to compete against one another with UFC gold on the line. Daniel Cormier shares thoughts on Fury versus Ngannou. When Francis Ngannou parted ways with the UFC, many questioned whether or not he was making a wise career decision. By leaving what was reported to be one of the biggest contracts in UFC history on the table, Ngannou quickly began to face more and more criticism as time passed without an agreement to fight Tyson Fury. One of the people who was outspoken regarding Ngannou was none other than Hall of Famer Daniel Cormier. During a recent episode of his DC and RC show on ESPN, Cormier apologized to the former champ by previously stating that the Predator should just bite the bullet and give in during his standoff with the UFC.
First off, I'm sorry, Francis. Yeah, I want to fumble your bag too, Francis. Boy. But RC, can I ask you a question? Do you have to be a little bit naive to go out in that world like that and know your value to the point that you will, even when it looked dark, to stand on your loyal and go, it'll happen for me? Francis had just enough of that, and now he finds himself, he's going to make more money than he ever could have imagined making in his entire life.
Although a specific amount for his purse wasn't revealed, Ngannou's manager, Markel Martin, recently appeared on the MMA Hour, where he opened up on just how big of a deal they secured for the former champ.
This is life-changing. This is exactly what we planned and visualized, so we're happy.
While Ngannou remains an underdog, should he manage to get the job done and shock the world, a clause is in place that would guarantee Fury a rematch, meaning the Predator could potentially be in for 2 massive paydays. Islam Makhachev team reacts to Alexander Volkanovski. Heading into UFC 290, Alexander Volkanovski let it be known that he was hopeful to have a highly anticipated rematch with Islam Makhachev at UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi. With Charles Oliveira recently announcing that he will not be ready to fight for the belt in time for the event, it seems as though Volkanovski will look to return from arm surgery in time for the duo to face off once again for the lightweight title. In the wake of Volkanovski's dominant win over Yair Rodriguez, Islam Makhachev's coach Javier Mendez weighed in on the performance and a potential rematch during a recent episode of his podcast.
That was a beautiful display of a guy that's super smart, great IQ, and let's see what happens. Let's see if they give him to Islam, or they give someone else to Islam, or but somewhere down the line, we're gonna have to fight him again, and I look forward to it because it'll be a great fight, and
following the impressive title defense from Volkanovski, lightweight contender Michael Chandler also spoke about the performance in a video for his YouTube channel, labeling Volkanovski as the most complete fighter in the world.
There's a reason why he's the pound for pound #1. I break it down to 3 C's: completeness, cardio, and composure. He is the most complete fighter that we have on the roster in the UFC, the most complete fighter in the entire world.
With options in front of him when he returns to the octagon, who do you want to see Volkanovski fight next? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Jamahal Hill announces first title defense. Jamahal Hill is sick and tired of waiting for a fight and is taking it upon himself to try and book himself for his first title defense after winning the vacant light heavyweight strap at the beginning of the year. While the hope initially was that Hill would defend his title against Jiri Prochazka when the former champ was ready to make his big return to the octagon, it sounds as though Hill is ready to fight the winner of UFC 291's Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira fight rather than Magomed Ankalaev as many have called for. Speaking to MMA Junkie Radio at UFC X during International Fight Week, Hill stated that he will without question defend his title before the end of the year, whether Jiri Prochazka is ready or not.
Yeah, no, 100% I expect to fight again this year. I would have liked to have already have fought again and been looking down to fight at another fight, but I'm definitely 100% I expect to fight before the end of this year.
With UFC 291 rapidly approaching, who do you think Hill will wind up defending his title against? Drop your predictions in the comments section below. UFC updates. This week saw a slew of updates to recent cards, as well as some big reports regarding the return of a former champion. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Heading into UFC Fight Night Holm vs. Bueno Silva this weekend, Walt Harris has revealed that a flagged USADA drug test has forced him off the card. Harris released a statement on Instagram regarding the matter, stating that he believes the positive test to be the result of a contaminated supplement he's been using his whole career that he didn't realize was not approved by USADA. Given that Fight Week is underway, Harris's opponent, Josh Parisian, is expected to be pulled from the card. This week also saw a shakeup to UFC Fight Night Nashville on August 5th. With Tagir Ulanbekov forced out of the fight, Cody Durden has now stepped in as a replacement opponent for Jake Hadley after shooting his shot on Twitter. Durden then seemingly confirmed that he was stepping in a tweet where he told Hadley he would see him in Nashville. Last but certainly not least, in the fight announcements department, Daniel Da Silva and Edgar Chairez have reportedly agreed to fight on September 16th on the UFC's Mexican Independence Day card at the T-Mobile Arena. Da Silva will be looking to snap a 4-fight skid inside the octagon, while Chairez looks to bounce back from a UFC 290 loss to Tatsuro Taira. This week also saw Chelsea Chandler, who fights this weekend at the UFC Apex, dropped some pretty big news regarding former champion Ronda Rousey. According to Chandler, she's hearing that Rousey could be back to compete at featherweight in the future. And now for our breaking news story of the day. We have Ronda Rousey breaking silence on her UFC return. Rumors surfaced yesterday that Ronda Rousey may be coming back to the UFC, but was quickly shot down by Ariel Helwani on Twitter. Ariel tweeted out on Twitter today stating, "Ronda Rousey is not considering a UFC comeback, I'm told." No truth to the rumors started yesterday. Ronda hasn't fought in the UFC since 2016, and according to Ariel Helwani, she is not considering a comeback now. What do you think of this situation? Would you like to see Ronda Rousey come back to the UFC? Let us know in the comments below. George St-Pierre name drops 4 opponents for upcoming grappling match. With the recent announcement that Hall of Famer George St-Pierre will return to active competition to participate in a grappling match, there's been much talk about who the former 2-division champion could wind up testing himself against. During a recent episode of the MMA Hour, St-Pierre name dropped 4 opponents while discussing his return before ultimately leaving it up to the fans to decide who he should compete against.
That there are guys that are veteran fighters that have a good grappling background. I'm talking about maybe the Diaz brothers. Could be a guy, I don't know, like I'm a competitive guy, and something like that maybe I think the fans will want to see. Or it could be someone that is active, right now, that is currently active. I don't know, Usman, Covington, someone like this.
While Nate Diaz is gearing up for a boxing match with Jake Paul next month, and Colby Covington is preparing for his crack at the welterweight title, Nick Diaz and Kamaru Usman both could be great potential opponents. After Diaz's loss to Robbie Lawler back in 2021, he notably underwent neck surgery before then getting back to training in the hopes of a return. Another name fans were hopeful for was Khabib Nurmagomedov, who St-Pierre said is retired and unlikely to be interested. With that in mind, who do you want to see GSP compete against? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below.